Decided to change the rear drum support bearing on your dryer. Pretty easy job. All you're going to need is a putty knife, Phillips screwdriver, 5/16 nut driver, and maybe a flat blade screwdriver. Let me show you how it's done. The very first step in this repair will be to disconnect the dryer from the power supply. It has a cord on it, just pull a cord out of the socket. If it is hardwired, we need to locate the breaker for this dryer and make sure the power is turned off. Next, we're going to take a putty knife, find the clips that hold front to the top. Release them both, lift our top up. The top won't support itself, so we need to lean it up against the wall. Now with the Phillips screwdriver, we're going to remove 2 screws, one on each side, that hold the front panel on. Now there's some retaining clips along each side that may be a little snug. So if the front panel doesn't pull away freely, locate those, just try gently on either side. Clip may fall off of the front panel, but they mount very easily. Just a matter of sliding into a rectangular slot and snapping them into place. Lift up on the front panel, tilt it away. We'll reinstall that clip right now so we don't lose it. And support the front panel against the cabinet. Next, we need to release the belt from the idler. So we're reaching over on top of the exhaust, find the idler pulley, pull it towards the left, and with our right hand we'll roll the belt off the motor pulley. Once we know the belt is free, slowly release the idler. Now, with a firm grip on the belt, we're going to give it a sharp pull upwards to release the rear drum bearing. Now that we've got it free of the rear drum bearing, we can slide it out through the front of the cabinet. It's a fairly snug fit. Now we have access to the screws that hold the rear support bearing. 5/16 nut driver. Now before we remove these 2 screws, let's make sure that we have at least one of them snug. And we'll remove the other one. These screws go into a mounting clip on the back. If we can save ourselves having to crawl behind the dryer to hold that in place, we move one screw and then try to pivot the bearing up and away. We'll stick that screw back in place just to hold the bracket. Now we can remove the other screw. There's a ball bearing right at the very center of that rear bearing. Keep an eye on it because chances are it's going to fall out of place. Actually, we got lucky and it stayed. Let's locate it right in the center there. It's covered with grease, but we will need to reuse that. Now, I've cleaned up that ball bearing so you can see it a little better. It needs to be installed on the new rear drum support. It will pop out through the back. There's a little recessed hole here that it will sit into. We need to reuse that. Now, before we reinstall this new rear bearing, I'm going to take a little bit of high temperature grease, smear a little bit at the very back there. The ball bearing will sit up against a spring clip that also acts as the mounting for that bracket. And we'll put a little bit in the opening at the back of this bearing just to hold it in place. Set the bearing into its recess. And carefully slide it down until we line up one of the screw holes here. Now, if you're having a hard time getting that screw started in the bracket, you may need to reach behind the dryer and line it up again. Once we've got it started by hand, take our 5/16 nut driver, just snug it up a bit. Now we can loosen the other one, take it out. Now, line the bearing up. Reinstall that screw. Again, if we miss that screw hole in that bracket, you may need to reach behind the dryer to line it up again. Check and make sure our bearing is still in place, and yes it is. Now we can tighten both screws. Now we need to fill this cavity with that high temperature lubricant. That's what our drum shaft is going to roll in, so we need to fill up a good amount of that in there. Now we're ready to reinstall the drum. So we'll tilt it into the opening. You may have to lift up on this cross piece a little bit, clearance. Once we get it most of the way back, we can drape the belt around it, keeping the groove side of the belt against the drum. Now we have to line up the tumbler shaft with that rear support bearing. Get that up high enough that it'll drop into place. There, it's firmly in place. Now we need to reinstall the belt on the idler pulley and the motor pulley. Again, we reach in over top of the exhaust vent with our left hand and across the top of the motor with our right hand. Take the belt, lay it across the idler pulley, pull the idler pulley towards the left, rotate the belt around the motor shaft. Release the tension on the idler pulley, and everything is in place. Turns freely, and we can see that our motor is turning. Now we're ready to put the front panel on. So I'll position the front panel, keep lining up the slots in the base of the front panel with the tabs on the base. Make sure our clips line up. We may have to lift up on the drum a little bit to center it around the door opening. We'll reinstall the 2 Phillips screws that secure the front panel to the cabinet. Then we can lower the top down, locate the clips on the front panel, the openings in the top, snap it into place, and our repair is complete.